The real root of the problem is accountability. And the reason why there's an issue with accountability is because the jury system, the way things work in court, is kind of like that thing that's looking you right dead in the eye. The problem's right there, but you're not able to deal with it just simply for whatever reason. People aren't really addressing it. It's almost like you're creating, in many ways, your own problem in some circumstances, but at the same time, you're not engaged in trying to do the things that you possibly need to do to make sure that these things are actually changing, because they know the game, we don't know the game. How are court decisions decided? Basically, in the court, there's actually the trier of fact and a trier of law, right? The trier of law is the individual who determines how court cases are or what laws actually applies to a particular court case. And the trier of fact is the individual who actually analyzes the facts and the truthfulness of the facts that comes before them. And they analyze that against the law. And it's actually the jury, in most cases, who is the trier of fact, and the judge who is the trier of law. And that's how court cases are decided. Now, obviously, the jury is the one that makes the decision as to who's guilty or not guilty, and they make the decision and culpability as far as civil guilt and damages. And why is that really important? In many cases, it's like the Emmett Till case. I don't believe that there was anybody in the United States that was surprised that the jury in Emmett Till was found not guilty. The individuals that were accused of it were white. All the jurors were white. We were talking about Jim Crow South. He was accused of looking at a white woman. And that's the reason why he actually ended up dead. But these individuals were found not guilty because of the jury. Just right there, that's the jury system. That's the reason why we're talking about Emmett Till, but it doesn't stop with Emmett Till. We're talking about back then, but as time goes on, we still see individuals standing outside the courtrooms waiting for verdicts, appear to be surprised when these verdicts come out in a way that doesn't seem just and proper. And there's something as a trial lawyers that we all know, there's a saying, is that a trial is won or lost at jury selection. Once you choose that jury, once you choose those 12 individuals that are sitting in that box, that trial is determined at that point. How are you going to stop wrongful convictions unless you do something about the individuals that are responsible for making those decisions? What are you going to do about police officers who are either charged criminally or subjected to civil lawsuits or civil liability if they're going in front of a jury that are finding him guilty or not guilty? The whole idea of you have a right under the Constitution to be tried by a fair and impartial jury, a jury of your peers, right? You hear that statement, but the reality of it is that the word peers does not appear in the Constitution. That's kind of something that actually that was stated in the Magna Carta. They used the word peer, and ultimately they said that translates into equality or equal. You're equal. And then but you do have a right to a jury of the cross-section of the community, meaning that it should represent a cross-section. People should not be excluded because of their race. So in other words, if you're sitting on a jury, the jury panel should actually represent a cross-section of that community. When they talk about it's in the hands of the jury, that's an important thing. And I'm going to give you some examples of how this is so impactful and how we should spend the majority of our time, if we really want to do something about the justice system, to start dealing with the way the makeup of these juries. I had a client of mine on more than one occasion in the city of Compton. And probably most of us understand that the city of Compton is a predominantly African-American city and Hispanic city. I've literally gone to trial in Compton, California, and had a jury did not have one black person on the jury. I've gone to Compton, California, and literally had a jury that didn't have any Hispanics on the jury. I've been to Inglewood and actually seen an entire jury that did not have one African American or one Hispanic on a jury. Now, to me, that's an alarming thing. And what's even more alarming is that everyone is sitting there and nobody is asking that question, right? Why isn't there people who look like me sitting on that jury, right? And what's important, we have to understand that we all have inherent biases, right? It doesn't stop at the courtroom doors. Our inherent biases is something that we all have. But in addition to having these inherent biases, that has an impact on your individual reality. Meaning that my reality as a black man growing up or here in the United States is much different than somebody else. It's not the same reality. We're going to see things completely different than other individuals based upon our inherent biases and our reality and our environments. So when you pick a jury and a jury is hearing evidence, their truth, the way they see facts, is going to be different based upon where they come from, who they are, their own experiences. We often know that oftentimes that many cases actually turn on the credibility of police officers. Let's just be honest, police officers lie. I've caught police officers in line. We know that police officers have lied. But there's actually jurors that come from certain backgrounds that believe that police officers do not lie. They do not believe that police officers will not get on the stand and say something that's not true. And that's absolutely not true. And so if you are a person who has been subjected to some sort of inappropriate or some sort of police abuse, and that's actually the facts of the case, but you don't have any jurors that's going to be able to look at that evidence from a unbiased perspective, then how can you have a fair trial? The only way you can have a fair trial is to have that balance of individuals from different parts of the community that can discuss the evidence in deliberation in a way that's going to make it more fair and impartial. Because you can't get rid of the inherent biases that come with an individual. And most of us, unfortunately, the most dangerous thing is individuals that do not recognize that they have this inherent bias. And so when you talk about everything is in the hands of the jury, it is. Imagine that you're falsely accused of a capital case. And you know you did not do it. There's no way you might not even have been in the city at the time that it happened. But the prosecutor has a witness that said it was you, that looked like you. And they're going forward with the case. But you have evidence and you have witnesses that say, no, you wasn't here. You was in Atlanta. You wasn't even in the state of California. But they take it to trial anyway. When you sit at counsel's table, in your mind, you're thinking, I didn't do it and there's no way I could be convicted of it. But when you look over at the jury panel and there's nobody that looks like you, you know that whether you did it or didn't do it is not really the issue. Because you're going to have to convince 12 people that the system falsely accused you of something. And if you do not believe that the system is capable of doing that, then you're living in fantasy land. Now, what they're going to do is they're going to let you know. Let's talk about. I was listening on the radio the other day where we're talking to a man who spent 15 years in prison. And he talked about his experiences and he talked about how he did not do what he was accused of doing. And he said that he told the police officer, he said, sir, I did not do this. He says, look, I don't care whether you did it or not. Because you're going to go to court, there's going to be a white judge, there's going to be a white jury, and you're going to go to jail, boy. That's what he said he was told. He went to court, there was a white judge, there was a white jury, and he went to prison for something that he didn't do. Who is really the gatekeeper of the criminal justice system? is the citizen. The whole idea of putting the citizen in the jury pool is to make sure that the citizen can look at this individual and you can be tried by your peers, that you're not going to be subjected to government corruption. But the only way that you can do that is have individuals that are in the jury box that are your equal, right? And we continue to live in this fantasy world where we believe that race doesn't matter. But there's been studies after studies after studies that have been done that suggest that anywhere between 16 to 30% of white jurors convict black people 30% more of the time than they would a white jury, almost half. It almost doubles in some instances. It depends on what study you're looking at. In my experience, I would suggest that it's much higher, right? And so the only way that you're going to have to deal with that is you're going to have to start having juries that look like the individuals that are being charged with these crimes. You're going to have to start having juries that look like the communities in which they serve. Can you imagine what would happen if a police officer is accused of killing someone unjustly in the city of Compton, and the jury was from the city of Compton, right? Now, do you think that you would get the same outcome from a jury from Compton than you would from a jury from the Valley? That's going to be different, isn't it? And if you have a police officer that knows that when he goes into this community to serve, that the people that he is serving also have an opportunity to judge him on a jury, do you think he would do the same things that he would do if he thinks he's going to get a jury from the Valley? You're not going to get the same outcome. They're going to act differently when they know that these individuals in these communities that he is creating havoc on are going to have an opportunity to judge him, and he has to put his life in their hands like they put their lives in his hands. And until we begin to start doing that, you're not going to see these officers being convicted and prosecuted. It's just not going to happen. Also, in civil juries, can you imagine that the city is being sued by a citizen in the city of Compton for something that the city and the officer did, and that the jury is predominantly from that community? Do you think that the city would pay a little bit more attention if they know that they're going to be found culpable and they're going to have to pay a significant amount of damages if this person is found culpable for mistreating someone in the community? All these years that we have seen these things happen over and over and over again, right? I've seen so many marches and protests that they all look alike to me. They even look like they're in the same city. And they're standing outside of a courtroom with an officer and a predominantly white jury, and they're crying and laying on the ground when they find out that this person is found not guilty. They should have been protesting before he ever went to trial. They should have been protesting about, this is the type of jury that I want. A matter of fact, I don't want to be outside the courtroom holding up a sign. I want to be on that jury. I want to have a say-so in it. And unless you have a say-so in the process and make an effort to start trying to have a say-so in the process, it's going to happen over and over and over and over again. One thing you have to understand about, and we're talking about, number one, it has an impact on, obviously, the conviction. But it just trickles down. You want to clean up the system, it trickles down. That's where it starts. So if you're starting to have a jury that reflects the cross-section of the community where these crimes are being committed, or in general, then you're going to start having different numbers when it comes to the jury verdicts and the jury outcomes, right? So if you're having start doing that, then what you're going to have is you're going to have a different impact with regards to prosecution. So in other words, as we all know, there's a difference between being arrested and being prosecuted. Just because the police put handcuffs on you, whether you know this or not, that does not automatically mean that you're going to be prosecuted. The case after the arrest is given to the prosecutor. The prosecutor reviews the case, and after they review the case, then they make a decision as to whether they're going to prosecute. And so the analysis as to whether they're going to prosecute is, will I win at trial? Because it's in the hands of the jury. That's the question that they're going to ask. Now, you remember what I told you about the gentleman who had spent all those years in prison for something that he didn't do? It's in the hands of the jury. They're going to make a decision as to whether they're going to win at trial. Does this evidence determine the probability or the possibility of success at trial? That's what they make a determination as to whether they're going to file formal charges against you, right? And if you know that you're going to go in front of a jury that's going to scrutinize the evidence in a way that is in a fair and impartial way, you're going to find that there's a less likelihood of frivolous prosecutions with very minimal evidence. The easiest thing to do in the criminal justice system is to prosecute someone. It doesn't take a lot of evidence, right? Especially based upon the makeup of the jury. Because I can tell you that I've done hundreds of trials. I've picked hundreds of juries. And I've had hundreds of individuals, or probably thousands of individuals, who have told me, and the question that I've always asked is, how many people presume my client to be innocent? That's the first question that I ask. This is how I generally begin it. I'll say my name, that I'm going to do 4 things, and this is what I'm going to focus on. The presumption of innocence, holding the prosecution to its burden of proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt, the right for my client not to testify if he chooses not to, and bias. And then I walk over to my client and I put my hand on his shoulder and I say, by a show of hands, how many of you presume my client to be innocent? By a show of hands. And almost always, you will not see all the hands go up. And then I will say, sir, you didn't put up your hand. Why didn't you put up your hand? The response is, he must have done something. If he didn't do anything, he wouldn't be sitting there. Right? So, and many of people, even the people that put up their hand, even know that they're thinking the same thing. That if you're sitting right there, you did something. You're not an innocent person. You're not a Boy Scout, right? That's their reality. That's their reality. Do I completely blame them for their reality? And keeping in mind, these are people just off the street. They didn't go to law school. They don't know how the law works. Everybody thinks they're a lawyer, right? They don't know. So he says this, and that's his reality. He says, my dad was a cop, or my brother was a cop, or whoever, and and they'll say things like that. Now, the first thing I want to do is I want to keep him off the jury, right? Because clearly he has this bias that he's not going to be able to get rid of right then and there, But what do you think the prosecutor's going to do? Because I'm going to say, wait a minute, I can get rid of this dude for cause. He's not a fair and impartial jury. The prosecutor's going to get up and he's going to try to rehabilitate him. He's going to say, sir, you believe in the law, don't you? And he's going to say, of course. Now, if your honor gives you an instruction and tell you to follow the law, you would follow that law, wouldn't you? Yeah, of course, sure. And then when I get up and I say, look, I want to challenge him for cause, right? And talk to the judge and say, he just got through saying that he presumed my client to be guilty because he's sitting right there. The judge is going to say, well, counsel, he was rehabilitated. He said he would follow the law, right? And he's going to stay there, right? With that inherent bias. Now, of course, there's 2 types of ways that you strike people off the jury. There's one called for cause, which you can do as many as you want. And the other one is called peremptory, which means you only get 10 challenges. So that means I got to use my challenge until I run out of my 10. So I'm sitting here thinking, we got 100 people in this jury, in this room. I got 18 people right here in the box, and I'm looking back behind me, and I don't see nobody that looks like my client. Right? There's 2 people sitting in the box. So that's the way they do. This is the inherent biases that these jurors have. This is what you got, and they don't lose that by just being there. And you'll ask them, I can be fair and impartial, but they have that in his mind. We understand that's the way it really works. He doesn't get rid of his inherent biases just because he's sitting in that box. But prosecutors are experts at that, right? They're experts because when they look at the jury, they're looking for African Americans, right? And certain types of African Americans. The primary African American that you're looking at is the ones that come from certain communities, you know, that look like they're kind of solid in their position, that they're not going to be able to get them back in the jury room and kind of beat up on them and get them to do whatever they need them to do. That's who they're looking for. Not somebody that's just going to find someone not guilty just because they're black, but because they're going to be fair. They're going to listen to all the evidence. They're going to scrutinize police officers. That's what you want. It's not about saying that I want a black man on the jury because I think all black people are going to let someone go free, because they want to protect their communities too, right? But you want someone that's going to be fair and impartial, right? And so, you know, they're looking, and I've had, and this is the way it works, is that the law says under Kentucky versus Batson that you cannot strike jurors because of their race. Right? And so it's a three-part process. So in other words, you got two black jurors. The young black man is going to be kicked off first. He's going to hit him. Says, Your Honor, I would like to dismiss juror in seat number 12. I raise my hand, Your Honor, a Batson motion, Willard Batson motion. So he comes in, he says, well, the first thing is that he is part of a cognizable group, meaning that he's a black man, so we meet the first threshold. Then basically all he has to do is give you a race-neutral reason why he kicked him off the jury. These are the things that the prosecutors tell you. Well, when I was talking, he was rolling his eyes. When I was talking, he really wasn't paying attention. I even had one person tell me that the guy had stated he had been on a jury before, and it was a hung jury. She says, did that upset you? He says, no, it didn't upset me. So that was really, she said, the reason I struck him, because he said he had been on a jury before and the jury was hung and it didn't frustrate him. I don't want somebody that's not frustrated by the jury or by a hung jury. I want someone who really would be frustrated by that. So almost anything can actually come into play as far as being a race-neutral reason for striking someone off of a jury. And then there you go. So now you got this one guy off the jury. So it's really, in many cases, it's all calculated. But if that is to change, and I can tell you that by having all these jury trials, that the makeup of the jury has a significant impact on the outcome. You change the impact on the outcome, then you're going to stop seeing these types of cases being charged. Because see, all they need to do is file the charges. You know, that's what you have to understand. All they need to do is file the charges, because they're experts at what? Plea deals, right? So this is how that goes. Mr. Ali. Now, when your client came over and approached the victim said that they thought he saw something under the jacket that looked like a gun. Now, your guy's looking at 2 years. I'm going to give him a year, and if he don't take it today, I'm going to add a gun enhancement, and his 2-year, 4-year, 6-year exposure just goes up 10 years. He's only got a day to take it. So you go to your client and you says, look, and your client says, that wasn't me. I didn't do it. I didn't do that, right? And I don't want to take no deal, right? And you tell them, well, this is kind of the situation. They're going to put a 10-year gun enhancement on you if you don't take the deal of 12 months right now. And so in his mind, he's been sitting in jail, waiting for trial because he can't make bond. And all them dudes that go to court with their suit on come back with a long face. Because when they come back from court in jail, it's like, man, I got convicted today, and they talking about they trying to give me life, man. They trying to give me 15, 25. And everybody coming back from court is getting this time, right? You've been in jail for 30 days, and you got an opportunity to spend another 4 or 5 months in jail, or faced another 10 years on top of whatever your exposure is, or whatever they do, the games that they play. And the only thing, the reason why you're making this decision is because it's in the hands of the jury. So am I going to put that time in the hands of the jury? Am I going to do that? I just got through doing a case where a guy was looking at life. Within a period of 3 months, it went from an offer of 15 years to 30 days. Then it goes to time served. The guy didn't do it. He didn't do it. But was he going to risk life when he could sign today and walk out? How many people would do that? Were you going to take that chance with the jury, knowing what the conviction rate is, whether you did it or not? Because a biased jury is not a fair jury, right? And there is no such thing as an unbiased jury, because everybody has an inherent bias. So unless that jury understands your reality, are you willing to put your hands in their life? And everybody's going to tell you no. Mr. Ali, do you think that I'm going to go home today when if I go in front of a jury, they might give me life? And then they even going to change the charge? I'm like, man, you didn't do it. Well, man, Mr. Ali, I like you, and I think you're a really, really good lawyer, but I ain't going in front of that jury. I want to go home today. Go get me that piece of paper because I'm getting ready to sign it. And so that's the game that they play. They're the masters of it. They're taught that. They're taught how to put you in a situation where this is the deal before the prelim. If we go to prelim, then I'm taking it off the table and I'm going to put these other charges on you. What charges? I think that he was with Pookie and Monster, and I think there was some gang activity going on too. So we're going to throw that gang enhancement on too. Gang? He ain't in no gang. Well, that's not what Officer so-and-so say. My gang expert's going to come in, man. He had a couple of stops. Where? On such and such street. Man, he lives like a block away from there. Well, that's gang territory. That's the gang. And ultimately, it boils down to one thing. It's in the hands of the jury. Now, jury impact on police action. If you make an arrest, this is why jury is important. If it's unlikely that the individual is going to be convicted, what happens then? What is the one charge that everybody gets charged with no matter what happens? What's the number one charge? It's one of two things. Resisting arrest or disturbing the peace, right? So no matter what happens, once they put their hands on you, it's resisting arrest. He was not cooperating. So, and the reason why is because, let's just say you get arrested, they stun gun you, they push you down, and they take you to the hospital, to the emergency room. Do you think they're going to let you get out of there without no charges? Because if you don't, then what's going to happen if they let you go after they done pushed you around and you got injuries on you, or they stunned you or did something? Once you don't charge them with anything, then they expose themselves to liability. And they're going to put something on you because they know no matter what, I've had them even go all the way to, if he'll take a 415 infraction, then I'll drop the charges. A 415 infraction? You know, because you got to have him admitting to something, because that's an issue of accountability. I've had him smart enough to say, Mr. Ali, I ain't taking nothing. Go to trial, you win at trial, guess what's going to happen? He didn't get convicted when he pushed you down. He didn't get convicted when you stunned him. So now what you've done is you basically exposed yourself to civil liability for police misconduct, because obviously if he wasn't convicted, he didn't commit no offense, so you got a problem there. If you're going to have less convictions and the jury situation is different, you're going to have less of that. Same way with culpability with police officers. If you go, as I said before, if you go into Compton and you do something funny and the jury looks like Compton, what do you think is going to happen? And if the jury looks like the Valley, then you're cool, right? But if the jury looks like the people that look like the city of Compton, then you got a problem, whether you're charged criminally or whether they got you civilly, because they're going to find culpability. The reason why they're not being found culpable, because of the jury makeup. Different reality. Wrongful convictions. We talk about innocent until proven guilty. We talked about the inherent biases. Individual reality is a byproduct of inherent biases. We all have it. I haven't met a human being yet that doesn't have a bias. And the statistics. It is a statistic that I said that goes anywhere from 15% to 30% that white jurors are more likely to commit a black defendant 15% to 30% more of the time than they with a black defendant than they would a white defendant. That's a fact. Same way with a white jury and a police officer or agency that is accused of misconduct. The statistics are there. The cross-section of the community of these jurors and where they come from have a significant impact on the outcome of these trials. And if that is an issue and you change this jury system being the cross-section of the community, which is supposed to be, you're going to see a change in that. A jury pool is when, and I don't know if anybody here has ever been called to jury duty. Generally, you go into the jury room. There's usually anywhere from 40 to 80, sometimes 100 people, depending on what type of case it is. They're sent to the courtroom. So you have all these individuals, and this is the pool that they've chosen to be part. They're not the jury itself, but that's the pool that you ultimately are going to be chosen from. Who do you think selects the jury pool? Generally, in most counties, it's someone that they refer to as a jury commissioner. Typically, they say that they take that from some sort of voter registration and come up with some sort of random number of 80 people and send them to the jury room. That's actually how that's happened. And based upon the pool, we talk about the inherently fair versus inherently biased. When you talk about inherently fair versus inherently biased, is there such a thing as inherently fair? Is there such a thing as inherently biased? Right? I mean, clearly there's people who have inherent biases, and it's clearly that people who are inherently, to some degree, things that they are more unbiased about based upon their own experiences. Your ability to empathize with this individual. Your ability to say, what if I was sitting in that seat? You know, how many jurors are sitting there that think for 1 second that they could be sitting in that seat? And the only people that think about that are individuals who come from a background where those things are possible, where they really believe that, you know what, I know I've had these experiences. I know that I could actually been falsely accused of something that I didn't do. Some people literally think that that never happens. There is that belief. There are individuals that believe that those things don't happen. And if you cannot empathize with that defendant, and you'll have prosecutors that will argue that that is not a rational or a justified criteria for a juror. That would be their argument. But it is, in my opinion. If you're looking for someone that can empathize and understand that an innocent man can be sitting right here. If you can't begin from that perspective, then you can't be a fair and impartial juror. who can serve. In order to serve on a jury, you have to be a U.S. citizen, 18 years old, understand English enough to understand and discuss the case, are a resident of the county that sent you the jury summons, not served on a jury in the last 12 months, not currently on a grand jury or on another jury trial, are not under a conservatorship, and have had your civil rights restored if you were convicted of a felony or malfeasance while holding public office. Now I want to ask you a question. Why can't a person with a felony conviction serve on a jury? Who made that law up? I mean, you're saying that because somebody's been convicted of a felony, they can't be trusted to be a juror? That the numbers demographically were different of people who have been convicted of felonies. Let's just say that we know that there's a disparity between certain people who have actually had a tour of the criminal justice system and other individuals who have not had a tour of the criminal justice system. So what that does is it excludes individuals from being part of the system. I'm going to do this to take you out of the process. I'm going to take you out of the process by giving you this felony, and I'm going to take you out of the process of being part of making these decisions, because I think that's completely unfair. Why would somebody not be able to vote or be able to? You served your time. That's like that's double jeopardy, ain't it? You did your time. Right? You did your punishment. You paid your debt to society, and now I can't vote and I can't serve on a jury too? I mean, that makes no sense to me. That's a lifetime sentence, ain't it? And that's not fair, because I can tell you right now, let them felons start serving on these juries and voting, and I can tell you that there are going to be some things that are changing, right? That makes no sense. I think that's completely unfair. I know that there's actually some states that are, and if I'm not mistaken, maybe New York is one of the states that are beginning to start dealing with that. But again, that's completely unfair. We talked about the issues about challenges for cause and peremptory challenges, and we talk about loaded questions. So the one thing that the prosecutor is going to ask, the number one question that he's going to ask is what? Have you ever had a negative experience with the police? You got 12 people on the jury and 6 of them are black. How many people you think is going to raise their hands? Huh? Either they had a negative experience or somebody in your family, and we're going to raise our hand, right? Yeah, about 15, 20 years ago, me and my wife were driving through Brentwood, and this police officer pulled us over, man, and, he, said some really inappropriate things to me, and, whatever. He's just set himself up for being kicked off the jury. Now, it might not be for cause if he says he can be fair and impartial, but if I do a Wheeler motion, what is he going to tell the judge? I'm going to say, man, he's just striking all the black jurors. Your Honor, they've had bad experiences with the police. That's a race-neutral reason to kick them off the jury, right? These are loaded questions that impact people differently. How many of you believe that police officers are capable of planting evidence? How many of you, like for example, it's everybody that comes from a community that is, where there's gangs and stuff like that, they'll ask them those questions. Is there anybody here that knows a gang member, had a gang, had members, family in a gang? They start asking the gang questions. So obviously, if you're from certain communities and certain neighborhoods, then you're going to know someone who could possibly be in a gang. You might live next door to them. You might walk to school, go to school somewhere. I mean, they're there, right? So what happens is they're going to use that experience against you to kick you off the jury, right? And the thing about it, and I'm going to put this out here. I'm not going to say this is fact, but I'm going to say I had a dream. And in this dream, I dreamed that certain people knew what to say on the jury, and certain people don't know what to say on the jury. And in my dream, I believed that people of color don't know what to say on the jury, right? And I believe that other people, it's like every answer is perfect. Every answer they're giving, it's like, man, they done went to jury selection training school, right? Because every answer that they're giving, ma'am, would you assume my client to be in? Yes, of course, right? And as soon as they're sworn in, their facial expression changes. You can just see it. Like they already had it. You know what I'm saying? I promise you, I've seen jurors wink at the prosecutor after they were sworn in. I promise you. I saw him wink at the prosecutor. Your Honor, she was winking. Of course, she's going to say he didn't do it, and he's going to say he didn't do it, but I saw it. It's like they know it. It's like, man, we need to start training people how to act on the jury. Because they know what to say. Some people look like they've been trained. They know what they're doing. There's an agenda. But we don't do that. We tell them everything they want to hear. I don't believe in the death penalty. No, I can't do this because I'm sick and tired of seeing our young black man go to jail. I can't be on the jury. What? Did you just tell them that? You just told them you can't be on the jury because you're sick and tired of seeing young black men go to prison? I've had someone to say that. Right? It's counterproductive. Right? We need to be on the jury to make sure that young, innocent, black, white, green, whoever you are, aren't going to go to jail unjustly. Types of jurors, we talked about inherent biases, individual reality, fair and impartial versus life ain't fair, right? There's no such thing as fair and impartial. Life ain't fair. This is the reality isn't this theory of fair and impartiality. The reality of it is that we have individuals with inherent biases who have different individual reality. And that's why we're always fighting each other, because we really don't understand that our realities are different based upon, our truths are different. Your truth and my truth are different based upon our experiences and our biases, right? And then we talked about jury selection bias, race neutral versus race matters. There is no such thing as race neutral. You know what I mean? I mean, we have to understand that although race is a social construct, it is a reality, right? It is a reality. Your experiences through life, the way you're treated and the way you see things is completely different. And that's why we're talking about a cross-section of the community, even when we're talking about the economics of it, right? I know the lady that comes up from the inner city, regardless of their culture or where they're from, is going to have a different reality than someone who grows up in the suburbs. It is a reality. How you live, what do you see? What is your economic aspect? I mean, it does matter, but we act like it doesn't. We talked about the Batson-Willer motion. That cannot exclude based upon race. However, there's a loophole. Prosecutors are giving classes on how to deal with Willer-Batson motions and how to say that there's a race-neutral reason because of rolling their eyes, inattentive, they didn't want to listen to me. It's like they closed their eyes, they were sleeping, you know. They seemed, their body, I've heard their body language. I'm like, yes, her body language, you could tell when I asked the question, her body language changed when I was there. And when Mr. Ali, she had a different body language, you know, and it flies. The sleeper cell jurors, we talked about the sleeper cell jurors, the individuals that sit up there, they know right off in the mind, they know what time it is. It's almost like they've been trained. And one of the biggest things that make it really unfortunate is the money. I can't afford to serve on a jury. You come from certain communities, there's a murder trial. It's going to take us at least 6 weeks to do the trial. There's some people that can't take off of work I can't take off work for 6 weeks. You know, and they pay you $15 a day for jury duty. You know what I mean? I mean, who's going to lose everything that they have to serve on the jury? That automatically excludes certain people from the jury. That definitely has to change because it leads to automatic. If you look at the demographics of the country and you look at the average income of certain people based upon those demographics, certain people aren't going to be able to serve on the jury. And that automatically brings into play the whole idea of the unfairness and excluding people based upon their economic class. We talked about jury deliberation and decision. It's important. When you go back into the jury room and you have people talking about what's going on in the jury, when you have people from the cross-section of the community talking about the case, talking about the facts, you know, it means different things to different people. You know, there's some people when they go in there, when you talk about the fact, when the officer testified that, how he collected certain evidence and how certain evidence came up missing, that means different things to different people. If an officer gets on the stand and say that I tested the controlled substance, but in the process we lost it. We don't know where it is, but we lost it. I don't know where it is, and we don't even have a chain of custody log. For some people, that would mean they just made a mistake. That's just a mistake. For some people, that would mean that's some fishy stuff right there, right? Based upon your background, your reality. That absolutely doesn't make any sense. The hanging juror, right? Some people, they know who the hang is going to be. They play games in criminal court. If there's who is the hang? Who's the one that's going to hold out? In other words, if you have 8 people who think one way and 4 people who think a different way, who's going to switch sides because of peer pressure? Oftentimes, your reality has an impact on that. So what is the solution? Jury reform. How do we do that? Well, we talked about education, duty, and involvement. Education. Why don't they teach this stuff in civics classes in school? Why don't we go out to churches and talk to our community? Why don't we let people truly understand how the system really works? Do people even know that it's the jury? Do people know the difference between the judge and the jury? Do they know the difference between the trier of law and the trier of fact? Do they know these things? And oftentimes, unfortunately, in our communities, we don't know. We don't know when we go to jury duty how things work. We don't know how important it is for you to be on that jury. If it was your son, or if it was your daughter, if it was your cousin, you know, and you have a family that's looking at your defendant, and they're asking you, Mr. Ali, you know, that jury doesn't look fair. It don't look right. I don't like that juror. You know, I seen the way she was looking. I've had witnesses talking to jurors before, prosecutor witnesses talking to jurors before. I mean, there's so much that goes on in this process. If we're ever going to do anything, if we're not going to do anything about the jury system, we might as well not do anything, honestly, because they're going to keep convicting innocent people and they're going to keep letting police officers who are guilty go. It will never change unless you do something about that jury system. Everywhere we go, we need to start talking about what's happening in the jury system, what's going on with our folks. You know what I mean? And some of these individuals who are going out here and you're marching, you can march all day long. You can change every law in the world. But when you go inside that room and you go in that courtroom and that jury's there, they're going to make the decision. They're the trier of fact. They're going to come back guilty or not guilty, no matter how many laws you change. You can go and do police reform. You can go and give them new training. You can go give them sensitivity training. You can do all this. This is not novel. We've been in the game for years. Same way with the jury duty and voter registration. We don't want to be involved in anything. We don't want to vote. We didn't want to vote because we didn't like whatever it is. We get the wrong person in office. We're always complaining, but we don't want to be part of voting, of doing the thing, or part of jury duty. So we can make that change. We want some change, but we want somebody else to change it for us. If you're not voting and you're not part of the jury duty, or you're not getting out there encouraging people. Some people, unfortunately, can't vote or be on jury duty. And that's sad, because it's stupid to say you can't vote or be on jury duty. Some of the people who who we really need involved in that process can't, because they already put them through the system. They already got rid of them. But those are the ones who are probably the people who are the most vocal, who we can depend on the most. Talk about the fact that you should be on jury duty. You know what I'm saying? When you're sitting on the pulpit and you're talking about certain things, we need the preachers talking about it. We need the imams talking about it. We need the civil rights leaders talking about it. We need these people who are ranting and raving on the radio and television talking about all this stuff. We need to talk about, hey man, you need to be on these juries. You need to vote. You need to get involved. That is what we need if we're going to really see any change. We don't need a lot of feel-good dialogue, because it makes you really good to tell you how bad they really are, right? To tell you what they did to you. It gets you fired up, right? But when you leave there, you shouldn't leave just fired up. You should leave with the incentive to do something to make a change. How am I going to go back into my community and touch somebody and do something to make sure that we're really trying to change this situation? You know what I mean? I want to find out. You know what? We're going to put together a group. I want the jury commission to tell me how they picking these juries. You need to tell me how to do that. I'm going to hold you accountable. I want, the prosecutor gets voted into office. I've met people that don't even know that there's even elections for prosecutors. They don't even know that they get elected. Some people don't even know that. Well, I want to know how many African Americans are kicked off juries. There should be a tally of that. We should know how often people from certain races are kicked off of juries and why they're kicked off of juries. There was a poll that was done of like 100 African Americans, and in some places there's actually, where there's a large number of African Americans, there's no African Americans on any of the capital cases. And they're giving them all these frivolous reasons as to why they're kicking them off these juries. We need to ask them. They need to be held accountable for it. Go to the prosecutor. Go to the judges. Get these tallies. You need to answer these questions. Why did that, when these police officers that are getting away with shooting these kids and these juries are letting them go, we need to start asking questions about what the jury makeup is. On all this stuff, you got to go out there. We need to start rallying and doing those things that's going to make a difference. Crying over spilled milk is not going to help, because they know what time it is. They know how it works, right? We're playing checkers and they're playing chess. They know what time it is. They know we can change all the laws in the world, but who's sitting in that box? As long as the right people are sitting in that box, you can cry all day long. But when they come back out of that jury room and that clerk or that judge reads that verdict and it ain't right, whose fault is it? Is it my fault that I chose not to register to vote? Is it my fault because I can't do jury duty? And some of us, granted, but we need to there needs to be some sort of jury reform. We need to put some of these things on the ballot about compensation for jury duty. All these things need to take place. And if they don't take place, all of our kids are going to still keep going to jail. All of our kids are going to have to keep taking these deals, these BS deals, because they're scared to go in front of the jury. These prosecutors are going to keep messing with people. Police are going to keep messing with people, because when you go inside this place that you believe is my haven of justice, and you look at that jury and that jury convicts you when they're not supposed to, then you're going to understand that's where it's at. Then you know, nobody talks about the jury process. You're mad at the prosecutor. You're mad at the judge. You're mad at everybody else, but the jury system has to change. We have to do something about that. You're going to have to start doing these lobbying these legislators, and public officials. and county jury commissioners demand representation. You got to sit up there and say, we need, monitor these cases. Go to the courthouse and go inside of these trials and look and see, what they're doing and how and what the jury pools look like. Go have people to go up there, have teams, have people to make these people accountable. What's going on here? Why is it that I'm running up and down these steps and I'm looking in every courtroom and I'm looking at this jury and this jury don't look nothing like this defendant? Or you're going in a situation, why is it this guy that's killing someone in the community not being tried by people in the community? They're going all the way across town to get somebody to serve on a jury in Palm Springs for a murder that happened in Moreno Valley. What's going on? It doesn't make any sense. We got to do something about that. And if we don't do anything about it, then we might as well just let them get away with it, because that's what they're going to keep doing.